Next up in the Atlantic Division, the Montreal Canadiens. Can they go back-to-back playoff appearances and stay above the Sabres? We'll talk about Montreal coming up here on Locked On Sabres.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and you can check us out on our YouTube channel where you can watch the show. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. You can become a part of our Locked On Sabres text club as well by heading over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres as we're coming up on, a little under a couple months until the start of the Buffalo Sabres season, and we continue through the division. Today, talking about Montreal, some news updates to get to a little bit later today on the Sabres and the Olympics, so a lot to get to on today's show, which is presented by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here, kicking off the week, and we're talking about a team today that is in a city that I actually just visited a couple of weeks ago for the first time, Montreal. I loved it there. I thought it was great. I thought old Montreal was a really cool town, really felt like Europe. Very touristy, I'll say that. But beautiful area. And then the Mount Royal area, which was much less touristy. Really liked that area. Montreal's a good visit. If you've never been, I would definitely recommend it. I mean, it's, 5.5, 6 hour drive. You've seen worse. Culture shock, it's not really that much. I mean, sure, there is a lot of French, but everybody speaks English. So that was not really much of a culture shock. I felt very comfortable there, and I felt like it was a really cool city to visit. The whole zoo, botanical gardens, biodome, Olympic Stadium area as well was worth a visit. There's a lot of cool things to do. Thinking of, summer weekend trips, Montreal for sure. And it's definitely number one for me. Arena in the NHL that I've never been to that I would like to. If I were to go to a Sabre road game, I'd want to go to Montreal to see a game there. The atmosphere at the Bell Center with all that history. I know most of that at the Montreal Forum, like 90% of that at the Montreal Forum, but the atmosphere at those games is awesome. And I definitely, I actually asked this question in the text club a couple weeks ago. Like, if you were not going to be a Sabre fan, or if you had to pick a team to be a fan of while we wait for the Sabres to get good, who would you pick? And my answer, and actually, interestingly, I felt like a lot of people's answers that I saw was Montreal. That would be my pick. I love the colors. I love the jerseys. I love the history of it all. And it's not like you're jumping on the bandwagon. I mean, they made the playoffs last year, but they certainly are not some Stanley Cup contender. I really have always been a big fan of the uniforms. I like the red pops, the blue over the middle. I really like the Habs jerseys. So let's get into what they were last year, what they've done in the offseason, and whether or not they can repeat. I've really liked their offseason. We'll get to that coming up. I think the offseason is going to be big here because as I did some research on what really happened in Montreal last year, the more I became confused as to how the hell they did what they did. How did that hockey team that had missed the playoffs a few years in a row and hadn't really been a true Stanley Cup level team in years? I know they went to the finals during that COVID year, but that was a hot goalie, Carey Price carried you through the playoffs type of season. That team was not loaded with superstar talent all over the place. A little fluky that they got that far. Haven't been, when Subban is there and they're fighting with the Bruins year after year, like 10, 12 years ago, that Montreal team was awesome. Carey Price still, backstopping that team. But in terms of like the historic Jean Beliveau and Maurice Richard and all of those teams, and I know those are different eras, those teams are long, long gone. What's left is a Montreal team that I think looked pretty average last season. And how they got to 91 points is kind of weird. Montreal at the end of the day, they didn't end up being a very good 5-on-5 team. That's where I start. Everywhere, like, all right, what was your season? I want to look at your 5-on-5 numbers. What was your shooting percentage like? What did you get? What percentage of the shot attempts in the game did you get? What your expected goals look like? How many scoring chances? How many scoring chances against? I want to look at all that stuff. And what I was left with for Montreal is they're one of the worst teams in almost every single category at 5-on-5. They got outshot a ton on the season at 5-on-5. Montreal was outshot 1,820 to 1,657. That was 29th by percentage in the National Hockey League. They got outshot in a bad way. Scoring chances on the season for Montreal, they were outscoring chanced 1922 to 1743. Again, one of the worst percentages in hockey. That ended 28th. Only Seattle, Anaheim, San Jose, and Chicago were worse. So, all right, weren't a very strong 5-on-5 team. If you listen to me enough or you know how those numbers can work, what's your natural progression? Well, mentally, I go to, okay, so if you weren't a really good 5-on-5 team, well, you must have either been incredible in net or you must have had one of the best power plays in the league. Or in most times you made the playoffs and you were that bad at 5-on-5, it's both. If you're going to be 28th, 29th at even strength with your skating unit, you better be awesome on the power play and have a really good goaltender. Even that's not true of Montreal. Last season, the Canadiens, when you look at their save percentage on the season, in goal, 20th. Not strong. Not really all that good at all. 20th. It's better than those numbers I just gave you, but it's not good enough to think you would be in the playoffs because of it by any means. Okay, well, what about their power play? 20.1%. 21st. Sabres were 24th, not too far behind that. So you were outside the top 20 in power play, outside the top 20 in save percentage. You were well outside the top 20 in all your 5-on-5 stats. How the hell did Montreal manage to make the postseason and be a top 16 team in the National Hockey League, going 40, 31, and 11? Part of the answer is in there, by the way. 91 points. How'd you get there? And to me, I look at their season and I started to look at their schedule and thought, well, they won a lot of close games. And they did. They won a lot of close games. They piled up the loser points. Those 11 overtime losses was the third highest total in the Eastern Conference. Only the Islanders and the Penguins had more overtime losses. So they stockpiled 11 points by making it to overtime, more than any other team that made the playoffs in the East. Also, 8 overtime victories and 2 shootout victories. So 10 points coming from wins in overtime in the shootout, and that's 40 or 20 points right there. And then 11 points piled up from overtime losses. So 31 points compiled from just getting to overtime. Keeping a game tight and coming away with either the 1 point or 50% of the time getting the 2 points. The Sabres, by comparison, 7 overtime losses, and 7 overtime wins and 4 shootout wins. So you had more points piled up by Montreal getting those close victories. Minus 20 goal differential, by the way, was the exact same as Buffalo and only 1 better than Detroit. So, again, it's kind of, I think, almost untrue to say Montreal was so much better than the Buffalo Sabres. Just they got the benefit of their close games resulted in wins. And listen, that there is a skill in that, and there is a holding up under pressure in that the Sabres deserve criticism for not having. But it is also not the measure of a great team. Montreal found their path to making the playoffs, but generally, if your path is, I got to win all my close games, and then I'm going to get blown out in all these other games, usually you're not going to do almost anything when you get there. And I also am going to be skeptical that you can repeat that. Those types of teams, which is what I look at in Montreal, a 91-point team that made overtime 21 times on the season, that had a minus 20 goal differential, that was bad 5-on-5 and didn't even have a good save percentage with Sam Montembeault leading the way, didn't have a good power play. That is the perfect type of team that I would look at and say, no way are they repeating. They're going to regress. And if that team barely made the playoffs last year, I can't see them making it this year. I like a lot of their players. That's the struggle with me. I love Cole Caulfield, 37 goals last season. Nick Suzuki has turned into a really good number one center, almost getting to the 90-point threshold last season. Lane Hutson was out of nowhere rookie of the year as a second-round pick. I love Lane Hutson because I played as a defenseman growing up, at like super low levels of hockey, beer league too, and then roller hockey, whatever. I like to play defense. I was offensive and I was small. And I am naturally drawn to players like that. And there are not many of them left in the league. Here's a new one. Lane Hutson is 5'9", playing 23 minutes a night on the blue line, 66 points in his first NHL season. I love the kid. I love him. I think he's going to be an awesome player for a long, long time. He's going to put up points. I think he was decent defensively for his size. I think that he is a stud defenseman that they're going to have for a long time. And that, again, was out of nowhere. Second-round pick of Montreal. I could have never imagined, and I don't think they even could have imagined that he was going to do anything like he ended up doing. If you look at the first couple games of his season, I guess actually they did throw him in right away. It was two of the first 3 games he played less than 19 minutes a night. And then maybe they realized pretty quickly because from there on it was 20-plus minutes. But I didn't see that coming for Lane Hutson at all. They got some really good talent. We'll talk about what they did in their offseason because, some of those core pieces I just mentioned, Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Lane Hutson, Sam Montembeault in goal, Yaroslav Koski. They have added around that 2 really nice offseason moves that I liked from Montreal that, to me, a team that looks bound for regression, maybe what they did in the offseason can fight that off. Talk about that when we come back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that'll bring your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes. You can see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. So check it out. It makes it a lot easier with your partner, keeping this clear. It can really add up shopping or going out to restaurants or whatever, and to have it all right there, easy to track, makes everything a lot easier to do. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast talking about the Habs today, the 24-time champion Montreal Canadiens, who have not won since 1991, and that is the last time a team from Canada won the Stanley Cup. Our Sabre fans, by the way, is there any that are offended by me saying, I kind of like Montreal, kind of like the logo, kind of like the jerseys, kind of like the history? In my lifetime, they have never been a rival of the Buffalo Sabres. Boston has for me, and Ottawa and Carolina, but never Montreal. If you go back to the 70s and 80s, I'm sure that's a little bit different. I'm not really all that sure about that being true in the 90s, but I don't think that comes across as offensive that I would like Montreal. But maybe there are some Sabre fans that would be like, no. I mean, they are in the division. The divisions are so fake though, and the Sabres never been good in their own division that it's hard for me to even take it seriously. But I don't mind Montreal at all. I kind of like them. So, hate me if you want for it, I guess. But everybody's got their second favorite team. Again, most wouldn't probably say it's in the same division, but whatever. So Montreal, I think they're a big regression candidate, but I did like some things they did in their offseason one move, their biggest move, that the Buffalo Sabres reportedly tried to do themselves, which was acquiring Noah Dobson. Noah Dobson of the New York Islanders. The Sabres reportedly wanted this player, but couldn't get him to sign a long-term extension here in Buffalo. Dobson has scored double-digit goals 4 seasons in a row. He's coming off a little bit of a down year after a really high-end year in 23-24, where he was 8th in Norris voting, 70 points, 10 goals, 24-30 per night on a Islanders team where he was entrusted to be a top pair defenseman. And that is exactly what he's going to be, I believe, in Montreal. Dobson, as a right shot defenseman, by the way, pairing him with Lane Hutson. I know a lot of offense there, and maybe you would think that's way too aggressive of a pair, but I would put those two together for sure, playing all the minutes. They are going to have the puck all the time that they're out there. If they don't like that combination, Caden Gooley is another option for him, playing 24 minutes a night, but it really does bring their top 4 into a much more competitive place where you've got Gooley, Dobson, and Hutson. I don't really know who their 4th guy would be, but I like 3 of the 4. It could be Alex Carrier, it could be Mike Matheson, or somebody else. But I really like the Dobson pickup. Now, they gave up a lot to get him, right? I mean, 2 first-round picks to get that deal done. And they were both in this draft, 16 and 17. They sent a prospect along with them. That's a lot. And then they paid him, which is, I think, what the Sabres wanted to do, but couldn't get him to do. He signed, I think it was an 8-year deal for $9.5 million per year. That's a lot of money for Noah Dobson, but at his best, he is absolutely worth that. So love the big swing by the Canadiens. That's on the blue line. Up front, where they've got a lot of talent, Caulfield, Suzuki, Slafkovsky, Ivan Demidov, 5th overall pick a couple years ago. Actually, that was last year. Last year, Demidov is going to play this year, likely in the top 6. Zack Bolduc, first-year player. Last year, they acquired him. He scored 19 goals in his first season. I like that move for them. They traded Logan Mailloux to St. Louis, so they're kind of flipping their depth. They bring Dobson in, so they send out a young defenseman. They bring in a young forward up front. I do like that move for them as well to kind of bolster their scoring in the middle 6. So I like that move as well. Again, that was his first full season, 19 goals, played very limited minutes, but was able to produce a little bit offensively. He was a first-round pick of St. Louis back in 2021. Bolduc was. So it's a nice balanced lineup. It really is. Are those 2 moves enough to offset what in any other circumstance would be, oh, this is inevitable regression? I think it does some. I would project that I would bet Montreal fans right now are expecting, all right, made the playoffs, young core, all those guys I just mentioned, other than not really all of them. All of them, Dobson's a little bit older, 26, but all those guys are young. Montreal should be thinking, all right, we're going to take another big step forward this year. We're a playoff team. Now let's go challenge. Let's go challenge Toronto. Let's go challenge Tampa. I don't know if they're thinking about Florida yet, but let's go get top 3 in the division and maybe win a round. That would be a natural progression. And for me, I think stabilizing or repeating what they just did would be a win for Montreal. Because to me, it's very possible they, even with the 2 additions of Dobson and Bolduc, that they take a step back. I think that goaltending with Sam Montembeault could absolutely come back down, even though, again, he wasn't awesome last year. It was a .901 save percentage. But he is a sub-900 save percentage goalie for his career. And it's definitely possible that he comes below that again. So the goaltending could go away, and I think they could lose some more close games this year, and they go to a team that was 91 points to a team that's like 84, 85 points. I think it's very possible for them. So for me, if I were Montreal, 93 points and the playoffs, I would sign on the dotted line for that. If everything looks a little bit more real, maybe instead of a -20 goal differential, you're +6, and your power play was a little bit better, and your 5-on-5 numbers were a little bit better. And even though the wins-loss record looks the same at the end of the day, all the story underneath it all looks a little bit more real That to me would be a win for Montreal if I were them. Given that they have a young core, I mean, they've got time here to build themselves into a true winner, to build themselves into a consistent playoff winning team. They don't have to be that yet. So I think their expectations should be a little bit limited this year. I would expect, with all that being said, that they will be better than the Buffalo Sabres. That even if they take a step back and they're an 85, 86, 87 point team, I think that most likely is better than what the Sabres are in line to be this year. I think if you're the Sabres, I think Detroit and Boston is a starting point. Those are teams, if you want to have a successful season, you have to be better than Detroit and Boston. I think the right team, the right two teams to set their sights on for the Sabres to be playoff good is Ottawa and Montreal. Those are two teams you got to jump. Detroit, you've been living in the same life with for a while. Boston, now you've actually even passed by last year's standings. Montreal and Ottawa, that you were living the same life as them, and they took big steps forward. Match that. Jump back ahead. Those are the two teams that I would be watching very closely if I'm the Sabres. Because if you can get fourth in the division, you're almost always going to be a playoff team. For how weak the Metro has been, you get fourth in the division, that's probably playoffs. And to be fourth in the division, the Sabres will have to be better than Montreal this year. One way to do that is Montembeault to take a step back. Another way to do that is some of this scoring to come down for Montreal. Maybe Caulfield takes a little bit of a step back. But again, I like a lot of their young talent, so I wouldn't expect it all to regress. But as a group, I probably would. So I like it. Wouldn't pick them to make the playoffs, but would predict they're going to be in contention all year long. Montreal. When we come back, switch gears. Olympics. Some news on the Olympics today, which is a good starting point for our Sabre hopefuls for Team USA. When we come back here on Locked On Sabres. Sneaky Jody Biasi back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Just a quick Olympic update that I wanted to get in today on the show, as I have I'm very obsessive about Team USA, the Olympic tournament that's coming up in February. And the news today was a good starting point for the Sabres players that are hopefuls for Team USA, which that's the team that obviously I'm rooting for the most, but also that I'm hoping Sabres make the team. You think we know Dahlin's going to make Sweden, Kulik's going to make Czechia. Like, there are some guys we know will make certain teams. Team USA, question mark. Tage Thompson. To me, there shouldn't be a question mark. And when I saw today that the USA Hockey had invited candidates to make the U.S. Olympic team to an orientation camp. So you want to be on this team, today's a starting point. If they're considering you seriously, you're probably getting this invite. And if they're not seriously considering you, you're probably not. So Thompson gets the invite. He's on that list. He's getting an invite. And I'm thinking, okay, that's exactly what I would have expected. I would have never thought for a second he wouldn't have at least been a candidate to make the team. So to me, Thompson getting an invite, not news at all. The news for me is that Alex Tuch got an invite. And actually, he was the last player listed, which I don't know if they did that on purpose or if it's just random. But Tuch, I think, is a player that I've wondered what USA Hockey thinks of him for a bottom six role. To me, he's a way better version of the player they just brought to the Four Nations in Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider as a speed player that can score goals and finish and isn't overly physical, but is bigger. Kreider is not the player he once was. Tuch is Alex Kreider now. Tuch is the player that they thought Chris Kreider was. And Kreider, by the way, is on that list too. But Tuch is included. And that's good news to me because I think he's a player that is deserving of a bottom six role on that roster. I think he's the best forechecker in the NHL. He's got the speed. He can play up top. He can play on the power play. He can play on the penalty kill. All situations. He scores shorthanded. I think Tuch is a well-rounded player that they should absolutely consider. And he can score a ton of goals. This isn't just an abdicator on the fourth line who scores 12 goals. This is a dude who scored 36 goals a couple of years ago and 30 plus last year. So I think Alex Tuch has a strong case to be on the roster. And for me, good to see that he was at least on this orientation invite list. Again, I probably think right now he's an underdog to make the team, but it's probably pretty close to 50-50 in my opinion. It's going to be very dependent for him on the first half of the season. Whereas Thompson, I think Thompson would have to do a lot to miss the team, given that they're taking more players this year. And I bet Team USA realized the mistake they made when they didn't take them last year. So that's the news on Team USA hockey. And there's really no date coming up on who's making that team. It's not going to be till the winter for that. So this was the date to find out at least this part of it. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on Locked On Sabres. Next up on the show, Ottawa. I hate Ottawa. Always Ottawa. Dylan Cousins' Instagram pictures have been making the rounds, how much weight room work he's been putting in recent days. I don't think we have to care about that, but I've seen some Sabre fans that do, so maybe we'll address that. Cousins going into his first full season with the Senators, revisiting the Norris for Cousins' deal, and can Ottawa repeat a 97-point season where they finished fourth in the division? Might be a little more likely than Montreal, but they're not a perfect story either. So we'll get to Ottawa on our next show. If you got a question or a comment that you want to get in on the show, be sure to text it in at Locked On Sabres Text Club. And if you're looking to sign up for that, join subtext.com/Locked On Sabres. Any more offseason hockey talk that you're looking for, check out Locked On NHL. They are available wherever you get your podcasts, and that also includes YouTube. You can watch their show as well. That'll do it for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. We'll talk to you on Wednesday, tomorrow. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.